Okay, first. There it is. You see, the norm is created by people, right? There is no fixed structure until someone uses the authority and says, stop talking. See? Then the interaction now change. Okay. Now we have the classroom scene. Okay, people criticize saying that this perspective is too strong. You can't see how society works and change. Okay, and that's why I say this perspective, even though it is in fact quite interesting, but not very useful for your exam. Yeah? Because you can't look at how society works and change. That's a criticism. Second, don't have theory of power, and power is one major sociological problem. Now, we didn't do power of structural functionalism. In fact, Parsons has a theory of power. We didn't do it. But Marx theory is really about power. Power of the dominant class. Yeah? This theory doesn't have power. And also the theory cannot identify the causes. Yeah? You can't identify the causes because it's kind of perspective that says, if all is changing, including what we know, if everything is changing, you can't really know the causes, you can't really do a quantitative research. When there's no number, you cannot establish cause effects. So therefore, it doesn't help to know to predict control, and also cannot generalizable. Yeah, this point is easy to write about, and you want to recognize this, because this will be also be criticism against qualitative research. These will be limitations of qualitative research. Can't generalize, no causation. Okay, and that's it. Now, next week, when I show you Microsoft Me, yeah, then you see how they explain education, and we can come back to this page again. Okay, we won't have time to do this, so we will skip this part about how we can use this perspective to analyze the situation, but you will learn it from the DVD. I'm going to show you next week. Yeah? So next week is going to be mostly DVD. So try not to come late, because I will not start the lecture. I'll start by showing you DVD. I will pause and we will discuss, and we watch again, and we pause and discuss, and that's the lecture. Yeah? Okay, DVD next week will also be about one social issue today, called meditation. Hey, the bed, now this is not break scene, They forget, that group, they forget the break scene over. Now we move back to classroom. Classroom scene now. Okay, so these are all for next week. These are all for you to compare contrast, macro, micro. This one for you to go back with yourself. Now, I'm going to start showing you 10 of Marx. Just 15 minutes. You guys pay attention to two things in the DVD. Yeah? You kind of know Marx. I want you to see how to write Marx, how to give stories. How the DVD would help you write an essay of 1.5 pages. How you convert the DVD into essay. Yeah, as I told you, that we tend to give you concepts. Subject guide is very categorical. It gives you different concept explanation, concept explanation. In your exam, you shouldn't be written something like that. Yeah? Except if they ask you the question, what are the key ideas? You may say, the key ideas are this and that and those. Identify 4 key ideas. One paragraph, one key idea. That's the only way you can use the subject guide. Other than that, you have to write a story. How do you write a story? Later I'll ask you that. You watch carefully. How would you write a story based on what you see? That's one. Second one one that you want to pay attention to is how Marxists can help explain education. Because later on, after this, you are going to group into group again and look for issues. If you can think of social problems, it will be better, because my assignment asks you for social problems, and you think of how Marxists can help you analyze social problems, yeah, or any social issues. Okay, so now I'm going to start showing you the DVD first.
Karl Marx was the founder of an alternative structural perspective in sociology. Driven out of Germany and then France for his radical beliefs, Marx settled in England. There he lived in great poverty, often writing at his kitchen table with his children playing round him. Yet his theories were to change the world.
Marx's ideas, certainly for much of the 20th century, had more impact on many people, a greater number of people, than even Christianity or Islam had. So we're talking here of a very powerful idea.
For Marx, to understand how societies work and change, you have to understand their economic structure. Social change is characterised by changing forms of production. Modern societies were characterised by a change from feudalism to industrial capitalism.
By capitalism, he meant a system of competitive market enterprise of the sort which we still have today. Marx thought that when you have a capitalist society emerging, it's very, very different from any previous society in history. In feudalism, for example, the preceding type of society in Europe, if you consider, say, land, in a feudal society you could not sell land. Land was simply inherited, it was simply owned in families, it wasn't something you could buy and sell. In a capitalistic system, which is a market system, you can buy and sell anything, Marx thought. That's one of its most distinguishing characteristics.
You could buy and sell anything, even people. Labour became a commodity, something to be bought and sold, and if necessary, discarded. From this economic theory came a social theory, the theory of social classes. For Marx, all societies were divided into a ruling and subordinate class. The ruling class owed its dominance to its control of the means of production, that is, the means of generating wealth. However, there was always a conflict of interest between the ruling and subordinate class, and it was this conflict that ultimately was to bring about social change.
Marx is another social theorist who believes that society is a system, and that he is like Durkheim, he is like Brassens. Where he differs from those two is that he doesn't think it is a well-integrated system. In fact, he would take precisely the opposite view and say that every society that has ever been up to date has been riven with contradictions. Contradiction between the forces of production, scientific and technological ways in which we make goods, and the relations of production, the system of ruling class, subordinate classes, the bourgeoisie, the proletariat, which he regards as always eventually going to come into conflict with one another.
From this social theory came a political theory. Because of their economic power, the ruling class also have political power and control the distribution of ideas in society through the media and education, for example.
Like many 19th century theorists, Marx sometimes imagined his ideas were a bit like a crystal ball that would help us look into the future.
He believed that capitalism would be overthrown and new socialist democracies established. In fact, capitalism proved more resilient than Marx imagined, but Marxist ideas remain an important influence in sociological theory. 20th century Marxists have focused on the continuing importance of class as a major source of inequality. In Britain, for example, just 5% of the population own 40% of the wealth, and the major source of this wealth is ownership of capital. Marxists look at the role of cultural institutions in helping to reproduce this inequality.
The problem with Marx's sociology in the 20th century was that many of his predictions never happened. The dominant classes remained the capitalist dominant class. How do you explain this? Well, there have been two explanations, I think, offered. One is the Frankfurt School, the idea of culture industry. That there is a culture industry associated particularly with the media, television, film, radio, and mass publishing, which inculcates the masses with values that are conformist, so much so that the masses have become passive and atomized. They no longer are capable of changing the world. The second theory is Gramsci's notion of hegemony. And this, in a way, is a little bit more sophisticated, because what it suggests is that it's not a question of indoctrination of culture into the masses. Rather, the masses accept the legitimacy of a particular social group, a dominant class. They accept their values grudgingly, but at the same time being critical of those values.
From this theoretical perspective, education is also seen to play an important part in reproducing these inequalities.
Marx's view of education, I think, can be likened in many ways to a structural functionalist view of education. It is a macro perspective, whereas structural functionalists believe the division of labour was functional and good for society and good for social order. The Marxists believe it's simply good for capitalism. It reproduced the capitalist system.
I think you learn a lot of values at school, sort of authority, and how that you've got to respect people in authority sort of within school, and then that helps you in your sort of the workforce afterwards.
I like being up front. When you eventually leave school, you're bound to have someone in authority. So if you're not used to it, it's, you're not going to work to the best of your abilities.
If you've learned all through your school, for however many years you've been there, to respect authority, to do as you're told, to be a conformist really, that when you go out to the job market and you get a boss, you're not going to protest against your situations, even if it's appalling.
For some sociologists, all aspects of the curriculum have the hidden function of teaching and reinforcing an authority structure.
You play games, and this has a very important function, a latency function, a tension management function. But also, you are socialised into your position in a hierarchy, and especially a status position, and you know your place, and schools function for doing this.
Right, you've won. Winners up, losers down, quick change round and start again.
Marxists also argue that the role allocation function of education is not simply based on merit and effort, but is also influenced by background and class. Data from the General Household Survey showed that more than half the children of professional fathers obtained a degree or another higher education qualification, but the figure was less than 10% for children from unskilled manual backgrounds. 60% of those from unskilled manual backgrounds had no educational qualifications, compared to only 7% from the professional class.
Well, particularly in recent changes that have been brought around government allowing middle-class parents who've got transport costs can choose the schools they want, they can influence what is taught in the schools, they can make sure that their children win by providing with extra resources, extra tuition or whatever. The system simply works against the ordinary working class child. The teachers are all middle class, they favour middle class children. And generally all the education system does is reproduce existing social arrangements.
In a famous study, Paul Willis looked at some of the processes by which a group of working class boys ended up in working class jobs.
Paul Willis' study combines aspects of Marx's theorising with a more practical interpretivist approach. So he shows us how the lads learnt to fail. They learnt to fail because there's no point in succeeding.
You know, in our particular area, for instance, the working class kids seem to already have their ideas and attitudes set in what they want to achieve. They come here, they've got to come to school, they'll follow it that far. But as far as any aspirations or ambitions, they're very limited in that they know what they're going to do, they don't need geography or French or anything else. You know, they're happy to get a factory job at the end of it.
I mean, I've been doing GCSEs for 1.5 months, and I haven't learned anything that's going to help me, so it's a waste of time completely. So, you know, just get out, get some money, and get on with the rest of my life, and not worry about what, you know, the time has just been wasted, really.
Instead of the teachers failing them, they teased each other, they prevented each other from learning. And so he looked at the process by which individuals, working class lads, got working class jobs.
The teachers, not especially well. They don't like me, and I don't like them. That's kind of like a mutual agreement. So, you know, they leave me alone, and I leave them alone, or they rub me up the wrong way, and I rub them up the wrong way. We kind of had that mutual decision between us.
Although structural functionalist and Marxist perspectives give us very different views of education and societies generally, they share much in common. Both focus on the general structure of societies and how this structure dominates individuals and controls their actions.
Oh well, life doesn't always go the way we plan, does it? But is it really all down to society? Are we really manipulated by social structures in much the same way that this puppet's controlled? Some sociologists are very critical of the view that individuals are the puppets of social structure. They advocate an alternative approach called social action theory.
Your exam, the introduction may not be as general because this one is more general introduction, you have to introduce you to Marx. In the exam, your introduction is the answer to the question. Yeah? Then you have to focus more on the question. Yeah? But this one, how did you introduce Marx? Anyone remember? Introduction? You remember introduction? No, that one is not. That one is the body. How did he introduce Marx to you? Who is he? Who is he? Do you remember anything about how they started the DVD? It says, Marx is poor, often wrote in the kitchen table with his kid playing around him. However, this is the theory that would change the world. Yeah? And it says Marxism has been very influential, even more influential than Christianity or Islam. Very influential idea. Interesting? Does it make you want to continue watching more about who this guy is? Does it? Okay, that is the introduction. And you have to learn how to write that kind of introduction. That make people wanting to continue reading your essay. Yeah? That is the introduction. After he introduced, and that formed your first paragraph of the introduction. Yeah? But again, I said in the exam, your first paragraph, you may start with something like this. Marx is so powerful, so influential. Yeah? As your opening statement, it has to be eye-catching. Right? After that, then you proceed to look at the question. Because you have to introduce Marx, if you choose to write about him. If you want to choose to write about Durkheim, you introduce him by saying, he's the first professor of sociology. You know? As the first professor, he must have contributed something. After you have that one statement, nicely about him, then you look at the question, what the question asks you to do, and then continue with the question. Now, for this one, they introduce, Marx is interesting guy, And then it says, Marx said, if you want to look at anything, you have to look at economic structure. That's why this one labeled as society is economic structure, yeah? Economic structure. Then the first paragraph is economic structure. Yeah? So they talk about economy, yeah? You heard capitalism, buy and sell. Anything's are for sale. Even labor are for sale. You can write more. This one is very simple. It didn't use the word forces of production, means of production, social relation of production, that kind of thing. Big word is not used here. Because this one is very straightforward, very basic. You want to have high mark, you put in those concepts inside. So you have a paragraph that is about the economy. Yeah? Yeah? So you write about economy, about capitalism. And then Marx, how Marx continue, how the storyline continue. From economic theory comes social theory. Yeah? That is your second paragraph. The theory of social class. Then you'll be writing about what you know about class. There are two important classes, dominant, subordinate in capitalism. There is capitalist and working class. And you heard something about conflict. It didn't use the word dialectic. You want to plot it a bit. Oh, you know dialectic it got from Hegel. You know? So when it is about conflict, you write all the items that you know about conflict, roping in all the concepts that you can tie in. This paragraph is the paragraph about class and conflict. Yeah? Just now you heard about conflict. You heard about the conflict between the force of production and the relations of production. Strain number 2. You don't have to explain, what that happened. Just like the DVD didn't explain to you how. It just said that's conflict between these two. And you want to write about class conflict. Yeah? So, the second paragraph about conflict. Class and conflict. If you follow the DVD. And then after the DVD talk about class and conflict, what else? From social theory comes political theory. That you write about superstructure. Yeah? Politics is part of the superstructure, yeah? You can talk about politics, you can write about superstructure, what Marx thinks about superstructure, including values. Value is a superstructure, yeah? Then you want to write about alienation. So you have everything of Marx, and you have a story to tell. Yeah? Now, the DVD, after the political theory, which they say very little, not enough to make a paragraph for you, you have to expand that. Yeah? And I say the easy one to expand is to bring alienation into that. How the values nowadays is all capitalist values, it's false consciousness, it's alienation, people don't get the real things anymore. No? Okay. In each paragraph, you make sure you have examples. Yeah? You must have examples. You talk about the economy, example would be capitalism. Yeah? Social class, example would be capitalist class and subordinate class. Those are the examples. Yeah? Alienation, the values, you can use example of religion or the mass media. Yeah? How religion, mass media today create the values in the society, and look at the values like the values of consumerism maybe. Yeah? Later I'll get some of your books to do something on consumerism. Now, the DVD. After that comes, okay, Marx imagined his theory like crystal ball, and he saw Steve with a crystal ball that can predict the future. Yeah, and the future is communism. Yeah, they say people criticize it. Why did the DVD do that? Because the DVD want to bring in modern Marxists. Yeah? Eventually, I will tell you before the real exam, you have to have Marx. After that, you have to prepare a paragraph of his follower. Just like the BBP said. Yeah? One paragraph of his follower. After that, then it was analysis of education. Yeah? For you, when you prepare for the real exam, you have to have 2 or 3 paragraphs of the theory, 1 paragraph of the follows. You may use, you may not use, depending on the exam question. And then another paragraph of how this theory of theories can help explain something, like what the exercise we're going to do today. Just now it was education. Yeah? What does education do? Anyone? Just now? Education. How would a Marxist look at education? Have you got anything? No? Education. I thought you don't understand me. You also don't understand the education. Very good. Okay. So you saw poverty just now. They come to school just for matter of formality. They just come because they have to come. When they come to school, okay, what happens? Okay, besides the working class kids get working class job, anything else? What do they come to learn in school, according to Marxists? What do they learn in school? Okay. Durkheim say school functions, right? Function is analysis, yeah? School function to instill students the norms and values of the society. And norms and values is about the value of fairness and meritocracy. Yeah? That's the kind of Parsons. Did Marx say the same thing? You come to school, and the school function to instill students with the norms and values. No? Did he say that you come to school, you exactly. So it's the same thing. You come to school, you come and learn the norms and values, and she say the norms and values is about listen to authority, isn't it? Do what you're told, right? When you go out in the workforce, you continue with that kind of values. Okay, so those values is not really societal values, it is capitalist values. It is the value which will sustain the system, make you good workers in the future. Yeah? And while Durkheim and Parsons say the value that students are instilled is the value of fairness and meritocracy. That would be rejected by your friend, your classmate just now, say the Marxists don't think of meritocracy, they think of class reproduction. Working class kids get working class jobs. You see the similarity and difference between these two perspectives? Yeah? Whatever institutions that you have, they function. Durkheim say function for society. Also good for us. Marx says function for capitalism. But bad for us. Yeah? Okay? Now you know Marx. We bring back Marx a little bit. Can you group yourself into groups? Maybe something like last week. You will be comfortable with your group. Keep that group. And concept that you listened just now. And this concept has to do with the economy, capitalism, competitive market, profit, conflict, superstructure, alienation, social class, exploitation, class reproduction. Just try to get 2 or 3 of these words in when you think of an item. Think first, which is the main concept to use? Which is the main concept? And as you discuss, somehow if you bring other things, bring it in. If it doesn't, keep just that concept. Yeah? So that it doesn't go all over the place. Sometimes when you try too hard to bring too many things in, by matching the example to this concept, yeah, you don't, the idea is to explain this thing, the phenomenon, not to explain the concept. Yeah? Not to bring example to the concept, but bring concept to explain this thing that you are talking about, maybe gambling, or drug abuse, or inequality, unemployment, why we have Christmas, why is Christmas coming every year, why people now are so crazy about branded products. Those could be good topics. Yeah? Okay, now, we have like, how many more minutes? Okay, I give you like 15 minutes to do it in group, and I think it should be enough, and then we spend another, 20 minutes, 20 minute discussion, and 20 minutes presentation. Okay? So, do it now.
What can I do with this? Later.
What is your topic? What's your topic?
Guys, have any topic? Plastic surgery. Plastic surgery? Oh, yeah, okay.
That group did branded group, branded products. What are you interested? You want to do social problem? Gambling?
Gambling. Yeah, gambling.
Or you do this, now countries spy on each other a lot. But that one, we have to look at global perspective. If you want. That one we more on globalization, global markets. It's challenging. Or otherwise do like gambling or drug abuse, some social problem or inequality. Or what else? What else are things that is going on these days? Gambling là easy.
What do you think about gambling? I have no idea.
How's everything? Exploitation and profit and capitalism. Yeah. Let's try putting them. Conflict. Can we do conflict?
Capitalism, because the price of the products are way too high, even though the salary for the labor is not as expensive as the product. And yeah, the branded things is happening because it collects so much profit in instant time. And inside the company of branded things, there is a conflict between the dominance, which is the owner of the, or the shareholders of the buildings, and the workers who produce the product, like the labor. And there is also alienation inside the factory because the workers who produce it and cannot own the products they produce. Like they are very far away from the product they make. And there's also inequality beside the between the wealth of the worker and the wealth of the owner. There's also exploitation in making that product into the finished good. Yeah.
Okay, so do you know why people are crazy about branded products now? Do you? They say companies make profit. Yeah, branded product is much more expensive than the actual cost, so they make a lot of profit. That's also conflict between people in the factory. There are two classes. There's conflict. There's conflict in the factory. Sure, there is conflict in the factory. Does it explain why people are crazy about branded products? Does it? You agree, right? That is always conflict in the factory. You know, factory workers want to pay less. Now, one factory worker want to get more pay. The boss want to pay less. That's always conflict. But does it explain why people like us are crazy about branded products? No. So it doesn't. Yeah. So what you do is you try to bring the categories and you try to fit the example inside. That part doesn't explain. The earlier part explains. Yeah. Alienation. They try to put alienation, and they say that's alienation because people who produce the product doesn't own it. Does it explain why we are crazy about branded products? No. Yeah? That part doesn't explain why we are crazy for branded products. Try too hard. Break into many things. The first part is correct. Alienation is a very good thing to put in them. See, this group also do the same thing. See what they have to say? Why people are crazy about high-end products, right? That's what I'm saying. Okay, listen and see whether he sounds like Marxist, whether he explains why we're crazy about branded.
People chase after branded goods because they want to, like, either they are already in that social class, so they create an image for themselves. So it's sort of like a reflection of the type of capitalist society where, like, through this kind of profits, they reap wealth, and therefore they buy more branded goods to sort of display that wealth. Then people who cannot afford it, they work very hard to achieve these goods because they want to look like they belong in that social class as well.
Okay, alright. So this group add a little bit about social class in there. They said there are two classes. One class as well, so they can afford it. The image is being created such that the wealthy class buy the product. The unwealthy class also want to follow to try to have the image of the wealthier class, right? But it still doesn't put alienation in good use. Yeah, you can combine what this group said and add alienation. See, the desire for branded products is not just the upper class, right? Everybody wants to have branded goods. Why is it so? because it's the idea created, this false consciousness, yeah, or it's alienated idea created in capitalism. Everybody, every one of us is inculcated with that value. How? Advertisement. Advertisement, right? The mass media is the superstructure, yeah, that serve the economy. So you have to start by saying, this is capitalism. Capitalism is to make profit. How to make profit? Producing these branded products, which the cost is much lower than the selling price. That is the profit. So expensive, how to make people buy? They have to create the ideas that these are desirable. Yeah? Now, people have that idea, you know, and we are all very crazy about branded product, not thinking anymore whether it's worth it or not. Yeah? We're not thinking it's branded, everybody has it, I want to have that. You know, it's all the ideas that come to us, wrong ideas that come to us. And capitalism creates this kind of wrong ideas because they want to sell the product and they sell it very well. They make a lot of profit. That's why we are saying that people today are very alien. Very. Yeah? We are willing to work very hard, you know. People who cannot afford it work so hard to try to afford this. And so crazy, you know. Now second hand can also sell. Now you can also go and rent a Hermes bag for a week. That kind of thing. You know, because you can't afford it, but you want to have it. It's wrong idea in here. We really, really want to have that. That's alienation. Yeah? Do you hear the word capitalism? Profit. Alienation? How come I didn't bring in social class? I say social class can be brought in. But I say not really the key explanation. Yeah? The key explanation I see, and most of your groups will be doing the same. Which group is doing social problems, something like gambling or you do gambling? Okay. Okay, because that one is a social issue, this isn't a gambling, it's a social problem.
Well, gambling is mainly a capitalistic structure which has the aim to make economic profit. Well, it does lead to alienation of false consciousness because the gamblers in the casino are exploited against, as they are given a false consciousness when every time they win a nickel, and this makes them unaware of the situation and makes them want to gamble more. This is more so as gambling is in the favor of the casino, as the house always wins. And there can also be a conflict of interest or a class conflict. The conflict of interest occurs between the gamblers and the casino. When the gamblers want to win more money, but in fact they don't, it's the casino who wins. And the class conflict occurs between the workers in the casino and the owners. And this leads to inequality due to the dominant and the subordinate class.
Okay? So? Good, you see why that's gambling? Yeah? I would like to just put one word in there. You're saying that gambling is an operation of capitalism, right? Yeah? In order to make profit, isn't it? To make money, so they get all these gamblers in. Now, put that, what kind of capitalism we are talking about? Just like the other group, yeah? When you talk about branded products, you want to group in Nike, Hermes, you know those are branded, so that you can make it more empirical. Here, what kind of capitalism we are talking about? You say it later on, casino owners, eh? Casino owners are capitalists, right? The intention is to make money, isn't it? Actually, there was another group that did gambling as well, you know. I asked them, who is the capitalist? The government. Also not wrong. But we want to talk specifically about gambling casino, like the sand, for example, yeah? So you're talking about the casino owner want to make profit. So what do? You're right. They create casino. To make people go in, they have to be alienated. They have to think that it is possible to make big bucks, and this kind of thing is like I don't know why gambling will gamble. You know, and some students say, oh, they want to make money so that they can put food on the table. I said, I don't think so. The gambler has never thought they're going to make money to put food on the table. It's not. People who want to put food on the table don't go gambling, they go and drive taxi. You know, people go gambling. The purpose is, I don't know, it's just like the ideas that, you know, probably you can make it big, you know, you don't know, and in fact, a lot of people go bankrupt, a lot of people kill themselves, that has never been exposed. It is really about going to feel good, you know. So these are kind of wrong ideas about what gambling is. You know, gambling is that you cannot get rich by gambling. Yeah? But capitalism gives you wrong idea. It is possible.
Do you have class later?
You know, to get rich. And then they explore a little bit more into the conflict that could happen within the casino, how that the word exploitation is really used, how gamblers are being exploited. Yeah? Actually, the exploitation is better than conflict. Because somehow conflict doesn't explain why there's
Go
so
to the
many
library
gambling
with the laptop library.
Yeah, but exploitation doesn't explain.
Okay lah.
Okay, I think we probably have time for just one more. Anyone would like to what topic in your classroom? Okay, let's listen to delayed marriage.
Sorry?
Because this one is not easy to do.
Lie. Sorry.
Okay, delayed marriage.
A lot. For she, it takes a lot of time for me. But I just could be around 30 minutes. It's because it takes a lot of time. So if you want,
From the past and now, children,
12 to 3.
generation that now children is no longer investment.
Do you free tomorrow after 11:30? Yeah. Do you stay in school? I don't have class tomorrow. So you don't go to school? Yeah. Okay. Monday? Which day you have class? Monday 3:30 to 6:30. ME right?
Another reason is capitalism. Now that due to capitalism, most people have profits and money in their mind instead of marriage is not their first priority.
Okay,
So,
they are very good. Listen carefully.
so marriage won't even come to their mind until they have enough money that they are satisfied themselves. Then superstructure with the changes in the generation, then marriage is now viewed as less important because the previous generation and if the current generation.
Okay, enough. You know, you try to force it too much. You know, but by creating categories. I think the first category and the second is very good, but you didn't link them. You know, the first category, they say because society changed and now we have a new type of society called the economy, and the children are not really an asset, therefore you see people tend to have less children. Yeah, this one they were thinking about how based on good structure and how the base create different type of family. Yeah. Another one that they were saying that now people change their mind, that kids are not that important anymore, they don't have money first. And that the operation of capitalism, about making money, about profit. Then when we have to switch a little bit, you have to bring the idea of alienation here. That say the capitalists alienate people by giving them wrong idea that love of family is not as important as making money and to get rich. So therefore, if you get married too early, it's you lose the chance of making it. So we have to combine that with the idea of alienation. You know, it's not really about the couple's time to make money, it's about profit for the capitalism. You can't explain that way. You have to explain in terms of wrong ideas that money is more important than family life. Yeah? Okay, good try, thank you. And this will go into one paragraph in your assignment.